Hi guys, and oops, let me go. Also, welcome to Mentorship Monday. Let me start there, and let me go live on LinkedIn as well. So we're ready to go live. We're trying all this new stuff. We're trying to be everywhere, all at the same time. So I wanted to say hello to everyone joining us on LinkedIn. Hello to everyone joining us on LinkedIn and hello to everyone joining us on Instagram. I am trying to just want to make sure, for some reason I'm not seeing us coming up on LinkedIn just yet. Okay, there we go. All right. So hello to everyone and happy Mentorship Monday. Avatando, I did see you coming on first, and I want you to rest assured that your thingy is on the way. Thank you for sharing your details with us. I do want to say hello to everyone on LinkedIn. We are trying something new with the LinkedIn, which is to say, how do we try and be on multiple platforms all at the same time? But as always, we have our way of greeting and saying hi. But today we have a really special edition, guys. That's because we have someone who's here. Usibulele, I can see she sent a request to join already. And let's go live. I was saying, please save the video. So Lerato, we don't save the videos. What we do is we encourage you to go and watch them on YouTube, where we save them. And then alternatively, we also ask you to join us on Instagram or on LinkedIn right now. So Sibulele, thank you for making the time. Are you in the car? Let me. Okay, so
I am in the car. I am in the car. It's load shedding. The car is much better. I promise you. I need to be outside. It works a lot better than inside the house. Or else we're gonna be going Not
got you.
Yes.
Okay. So as long as you're safe, we're really happy to have you. And I just want to check in for those on LinkedIn. I know you can't see Sibulele, but we're checking in if you can hear her. So Sibu, I'm going to ask you just to say hi one more time.
Hello, everyone.
So that,
hello, 10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1. We're about to start.
There we go. So she's giving us a beautiful countdown. So thank you so much. And I'm going to try to the best of my ability to paraphrase so that you guys on LinkedIn don't get left behind. So Sitwali, thank you. Lebo, thank you for your hellos. And everyone who's on Instagram. And I know, as always, guys, you guys join us from all over the world. And that's really, really amazing. So Sibu, we have people all the way from Costa Rica, people in Kenya, people in Germany, the UK, and of course, Pietermaritzburg and Bloemfontein and, Pretoria. And so, yeah, we're really excited that you're here with us. And this is how Mentorship Mondays work, right? So every now and then we get asked a really, really good question. And I'm going to ask you, Sibu, if you can speak up a little bit, because Lindile is telling us on LinkedIn that we can hear her, but it's a bit soft. So we're going to ask you to speak up. I'm also going to up my volume. Okay. There we go. So we can try and accommodate. And every now and then we get an amazing question from someone who says, hey, I have a question. And actually I realize I can't answer that question. It's not something within my lived experience. It's not something that I've seen. And so it's always good. Or sometimes even if it is within my lived experience, sometimes there's somebody better suited to respond to the question through their own experience. And this is why we wanted to get you on today, because we had a brilliant question about what if my goal for this year is to set up an NGO or an NPO? How do I go about it? And how do I make sure that it's really, really effective? And there's none other than Sibulele, guys, to help us make sense of that question. So I know she can be very humble. So let me just do the job of introducing her properly. I won't read the bio, but I will just, I'll highlight a couple of things. So Sibu's known as the NGO NPO queen because she's the person who really knows how to help you think about how to set up, how to make it effective. She's really good at public-private partnerships, which we know is a very important mechanism in making NGOs and NPOs land their initiatives. She has a range of expertise in terms of different areas, but some of those is working with international NGOs around HIV/AIDS eradication. She also has founded her own foundation, so that's important to know, the Sibu Sibaca Foundation, so she will tell us a little bit about that. She's an ambassador in different capacities. She's also, we say ngesiZulu uncwadile. So uncwadile means that she's earned her stripes academically, and so we are speaking to somebody who's gone to, who's gone and done the academic work of building her skills and her capacity. And one of the things that stand out for me with Sibu is that she was, of course, headhunted by Richard Branson himself to come and head up the CSR division of Virgin. And that's like, that's a big deal, right? So we know that's that's the Virgin Group. And to be able to do that in her 20s, we know that we're talking to the best of the best. So Sibu, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sisi. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so, so much. And you're right. It's always so weird and a bit awkward when, your bio is being read out. But thank you. I think what it does as well is to give people context and comfort that, what this person is about to say, they've earned the stripes and they kind of have a little bit of knowledge about what they're talking about. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, lovely. Ella is saying Batung. Fire, fire, fire. So Ella's very impressed already. I do want to apologize to our LinkedIn crew that, guys, we don't have the image today, but we're working on it so that when we have our guests, you can have the image as well. So one of the things I always have to promise myself, Sibu, when we have a guest, is to not hog you to myself and to really use the questions that the mentorship community, the global community that we are, have asked and sent for you. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just a conduit, and this is not about me, taking over the conversation. So I want to start off with a question from Akona. Akona is asking, what was the biggest challenge to starting up your own NPO? Okay. What is the most challenging thing for you to get started and to get off the ground and be like, okay, cool, this is it, and I'm doing it now?
Okay, so that's a great question from Akona. Thank you so much for that. And I think for me, what was quite, I knew what I wanted my NGO to be about, right? And I knew in what space I wanted to serve. But I needed the money. I felt like I knew the activities I wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to impact, but I just didn't have the resources because I thought money was what I needed to get off the ground. I quickly realized that money was not what I needed. And I'll explain that a little bit later. But money for me and access to financial resources was the one thing I thought was standing in between me and starting my NGO. But the moment I was freed of that slavery, the organization just flew. Because I realized that actually I had everything that I needed to start the NGO. But I was so afraid that I needed a thing to hold on to. And I'm not saying financial resources are not a good thing to have or a good thing to need. They definitely are. But you can certainly start your organization with almost a 0.00 bank balance. And so for me, that's what I thought was the biggest obstacle. And I'm so glad that I quickly found out or realized that that is not what's going to stop me from starting.
So I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little bit about how then did you start. But before we go there, Sibu, let me just check in. If you are in LinkedIn, I know that you can't see Sibu, but I just want to check in. Can you still hear her? Because if you can't hear her, then I'm going to end the LinkedIn broadcast until we figure out how to make sure that we can hear and see. And let's then focus on the Instagram broadcast. Or if you can, just please follow me at The Real Nosy. We're live right now, right? So all you need to do and come and join the conversation. I feel like you're not only missing out on the gems if you can't hear, which is beautiful too. So you probably want to come and see her as well. Okay, Sitwal is like, no, Nosy, we can hear her. Okay,
great.
So maybe to pick up on the question from Village, because Village is
Yes.
saying, well, what skills or capacity do you think are required to? And I want to rephrase the question before we start talk about running a nonprofit. If money is sometimes the misconception, how did you then start? Once you broke through the fact that it's not actually just about the money, there are other things that, despite the money, you might have to address, but you can still get started. How did you then start?
Well, here's the thing, Nosy. You need the money for particular skills. You need the money for particular services. Now, if you start your NGO with the right group of people who possess those skills and those services and the talents that you need, then you've already won half the battle. So let me give you an example, right? So one of the things that you'll need to start your NGO is a conversation with somebody who is a fairly decent writer. This person doesn't need to be somebody who's an author. It's somebody who's just comfortable with the English language. I often say in this space, there's English and then there's English, right? We need the latter. We need somebody who just has a good way around words. Grammarly is there for everything else. And by the way, just as a side plug, if you're an NPO, Grammarly is for free for up to 12 months. So you wouldn't have to pay for that service. But it gets you started on making sure that the way that you write, not only your constitution, but the profile of the organization is absolutely important. Now, first things first, before we even get to why don't we need money, it's important for you to understand what is the cause of my organization. What are we about? Why do we exist? What are we trying to change? What problem are we trying to solve? Once you figure that out, you'll then be able to understand what skills I need aligned to the cause that I need to move my cause along, right? So, for example, if you're going to be an NGO that's really focused on getting young people on board, you want, that's your primary audience or your primary target audience, then you may need somebody who's got a way around social media, right? Because that's where your target audience may be. Now, that's a service that you ordinarily would have to pay for. But now you find somebody to join the organization, be either as a board member or director or as a management committee member. There's a lot to talk about because I want to now get into explaining that, but I want to park that for a little bit. But the point
we'll talk structure just now. Yeah.
The point of that is that you then find people whom you don't have to pay, because everybody knows how NGOs work in the beginning. Listen, you can start an NGO. Your constitution is clear. You don't even own your NGO. If your NGO is registered with the Department of Social Development, you are just the caretaker of your NGO. The NGO belongs to South Africa. It belongs to the betterment of your target audience. You've got to run your NGO in such a way that one day you can hand it over to somebody else to run, because it doesn't belong to you. Not even the assets of the NGO belong to you. So it's important to find people who understand that. Please don't register the organization with your mom or your sister or your best friend, because they are going to disappoint you. We love them, but they're going to disappoint you. One. Two, they also may not have the skills that you need to get your organization off the ground. For example, one of the other things that you need when you start off an organization is to have your way around the finances. Now, I know there's no money in the bank account. Goodness, you don't even have a bank account, which I would say the moment you get your registration documents, please go and open up a bank account. It's really, really important. But you'll need somebody who has some understanding or hand around, finances or financial administration. But this is something that, for example, my organization, we're paying for now. But in the beginning, I made sure that I had somebody on board as part of the board who don't have to pay. You know, so there's so many things in the organization that you feel you may need. For example, if your organization is going to be specifically around HIV prevention and care, management and care, there are many people who are specialists in that field, whom if you seek them out for advice or consultation, you may need to pay them, right? Not if that person, one of them, is on your board. Not if they're sitting as one of your management committee members. That is the role and the contribution they're going to give to the organization. Yeah. So you've got to be really clear about what the organization is about. There are about, give or take, 3 or 4 people that I often say you need to start your organization with to save you money. The first person is a writer. This person is critical, guys. Somebody who knows how to write a sentence to make it look like, you know, there are people, man, knows who can write, man, who can talk about peanut butter like you want to have peanut butter. You know, those are the type of people that you need. And Grammarly will help you for the rest, right? Okay. Then the second person you need is a finance person, right? Somebody who has a hang around finance, you know, or that, or those kind of services. The third person you're going to need is somebody who is a designer. I cannot express how important this part is. Somebody who's able to do simple posters. Somebody who's able to do a 1 or 2 pager of your website. Just somebody who's able to take a name of a program that you want to pilot and give it a nice logo, even the logo of the organization, right? Then the fourth person that you need is somebody who is going to be able to facilitate. Somebody who's going to be able to moderate. Somebody who's going to be able to bring people together in a room. And it's that one person who's outgoing, unafraid to start a conversation with people in a room. It's really, really important that you have this person, because they're the ones who are going to show you or your people what the organization is about. So to start off, these are the 4 people I believe you really need to start the organization.
Okay, so I have like 10 questions, Sibu. So I'm gonna need us to because these guys are like ruthless. They're gonna be saying writing to me and DMing me. No, so you didn't ask my question. So I'm gonna try and bunch them up as best as I can. But I thought your answer was so beautiful. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. So what I heard there is purpose. Can we not be reading about you and how you used your NGO to get money from the lottery and then, you know? So I heard purpose. I heard a mindset around the assets and the ownership that actually that needs to be linked. This is not a vehicle to self-enrich, which is, I thought, beautiful. I also heard something that I come across a lot, which is the bank account. And it seems small, but when you're an NPO, an NGO, and then you're sending us your personal bank account details.
Let me tell you, Nozi, just on that point, let me tell you why the bank account is important. More often than not, I'm willing to put my head on the block, 99% of the time, when you are going out there looking for funding, a potential funder is going to ask you to send quite a number of things, one of them being minimum 3 months bank statement. They are not looking to see how much money is in the account. They are looking to see whether there is a bank account. And number 2, you're not swiping at Woolies. All right? They're looking for financial behavior. At most, they will ask you for a 2 years audited financial statement, right? Comparative. Now, people often say to me, but Sibu, I don't have money in the account. Hold on. You do. What you're going to do is that you're going to take 500 every month. You're going to put it into organization's account. You're going to buy your airtime, pour petrol, call Uber using the organization's account. You're going to use those expenses to run the organization so that money comes in and out of the organization. Just that. Needed to say that.
So I want to clarify another thing. So you spoke about cause, right? It was one of the first things that you said. Be clear about the cause, the problem you're existing to solve. How do we make sure we don't get stuck behind sexy causes? Because every era, every period has a sexy cause. You know, there's a time for this and there's a time for that, and how do you make sure that you're actually solving the problem and you're not really just jumping onto the bandwagon? I mean, when e-learning first took off, every second NGO was doing e-tutoring and, you know, all of that. And then I can't tell you the number of panels where I've moderated and the person's talking about how they're trying to solve for water scarcity in Africa, and then they want to tell us a sob story about, you know, their community and children dying because they haven't taken a bath. And I'm like, but anyway, I mean, how do you make sure that you're not getting caught up in the sexy things that everybody thinks are the problems of now, and you're really solving the thing that is required on the ground?
So Nozi, what I'm about to say may seem a little controversial, but here's my thing. It's okay to jump on the bandwagon of sexy at the time. If it means getting in, if it means gaining and garnering some experience, if it means building partnerships and collaborations, but it's always very important for you to understand why you exist. And I keep saying this because when the sexiness dies, what then happens to your organization? And if you were swept up in the moment of sexy, then you will have a problem. Now, I want you to think about it this way. When my organization started, I was an organization purely speaking to girls and young women around HIV and AIDS response. It was sexy at the time. It's what everyone was talking about. You know what though? That's where I also built a lot of my experience. That's where I got to meet a lot of people, making sure that I'm holding on to these partnerships for future purposes. Then I still stuck to what I'm about. So I still work with girls and young women, but guess what we also work on now? We also work with girls in all their diversity, from the LGBTQI plus community, in particular, trans young women. You need to find yourself in a space where you are continuously evolving and finding various other spaces to get involved in, right? Am I still doing prevention and treatment? Yes. Now I'm talking about the Cabernet, a new drug that is going to be introduced to the market, that people who are living with HIV, in particular girls and young women in all their diversity living with HIV, can take a pill once every 2 months instead of every day. Am I not still in the space that I originally was about? Absolutely. Have I evolved? Have I become agile? Have I looked at other spaces that could potentially bring the organization more funding? Yes. But I haven't lost who I am. But sexy was my way in.
Sexy is the way in. And I think Wavela and Fate was saying purpose evolves, cause evolves. Thank you so much. And again, I want to check in. I'm seeing a couple of people saying we've jumped onto Instagram, Nozi, because the audio on LinkedIn is not great. So if you're on LinkedIn, please let me know. I don't want to keep running it if it's not working for you, but we are on Instagram, so you can join us there as well. All right, Noble, I see you. We're gonna get to the partnerships and the collaborations, but I want to just go to some of the questions that have come in. So I'm gonna put together two questions, Sibune. One question is from Avatanda. Avatanda is asking, where do you apply for funding? Which I would imagine is a big question in everybody's mind. So that's part one of the question. Part two of the question comes from Bokang Mohapa, and Bokang is saying, you've come across a lot of proposals for sure, but what stands out? What's the difference between a strong proposal and a weak proposal? And how do I make sure that I'm submitting strong proposals? So where do we look for funding? And how do we make sure that when we find those places, our proposals are standing out for the right reasons?
Okay, so where do you find the funding? Look, you want to work your organization in such a way that the funding finds you. Because NGO founders also sit, by the way, twiddling their thumbs, not knowing who to give the money to. So they're also sitting with a problem on the other end. We think they never know who to give the money. They always know who to give the money to. Sometimes they don't. So you want to work your organization so professionally and so energetically, so passionately, that they're able to see you on your website, on social media, and be like, we want that organization. We want to work with that organization. 50% of Impact Drivers funding over the past 2 years was found on Instagram.
Sure.
They inboxed me on Instagram. So it is possible. Of course, then you need to know who the big players are in the sector you are working in. All right? Because obviously different organizations will work in various sectors. Now, guys, I do want to tell you that the health sector is where the money is. You may be all about ECD, which is early childhood development. My suggestion is find something with ECD and health. For example, there's this huge partnership that has come up since last year with all the major players in the space globally, and they call it Ending HIV in Children. Boom. So if you are in ECD, honey, you need to be getting on that bandwagon and understanding what does it mean to end HIV in my ECD children. Don't stick on the ECD, which is just education. Add the element of health in there. Then you will automatically open up your funding pool outside of just the education. Now, a lot of the South African corporates are about education, right? They absolutely love education. So if you're in the education space, starting from high school, varsity, a lot of the South African corporate organizations, corporate companies, absolutely love education. My point here is that it's important for you to understand which organizations, corporates, partners, sponsors focus on what element. And if you find that you're about helping the homeless, but you don't have a core reason as to what you are helping the homeless with. Now, listen here. I don't want anybody ever reaching out to me and saying to me that they're feeding the homeless. There's got to be more that you're giving to the homeless, right? More than just the food. You are going to struggle to get funding. Of course, you may get a Spar or a Woolies to help you with the food itself, but you're not going to survive very long, right? You're not going to be sustainable. I don't want anybody telling me they've started an NGO to give pads. No, you started the NGO because you are interested in menstrual health and hygiene. And what about menstrual health and hygiene do you want to talk about? There are a plethora of topics under sexual reproductive health and rights. That's where you get the money. No one is going to give you money to hand out pads. Nobody.
I can see how that write-up becomes so important, because if you don't get to that nuance and the core of being able to really define who your target audience is and understanding the different stratifications, you are going to end up being those people who say, I want to do a pads drive. And guys, we've been collecting pads forever. Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, we need to be doing something else now. Okay, so I have more questions.
Let's go.
Okay, so okay, quick technical question, because Village Mama. Okay, firstly, guys, this is how Mentorship Monday works. You send your questions in advance so that we can clump them and prioritize them. But then what you guys do is that when we're on, you're like, no, so ask this. So I'm being pummeled today, so I'll take it. Village Mama has now asked twice. Please, Sibu, tell us, what is the difference between an NPO, an NPC, and an NPT, which I have not even heard of? So what are the differences in the acronyms? And maybe we want to throw in NGO in there as well. Just give us a 101 in terms of the different structures.
Okay, so all organizations in the space are non-governmental organizations. So I want you to imagine as NGOs, non-governmental organizations, as the mother, right? Now, there are different types of non-governmental organizations, right? You could either have a non-profit organization, which is where you register for your organization at the Department of Social Development. You can either have an NPC, which is a non-profit company, which you register at CIPC. You could have an FBO, which is a faith-based organization. That's an organization focused on strong beliefs and values, religious values and values. Or you can have a CBO, which is a community-based organization. You could even have a trust, which is also a non-governmental organization. So you have a non-governmental organizations up here, and all those that I've just mentioned are different types of NGOs, right? In my recent post, actually from around an hour ago, I posted the differences between an NPC and an NPO. So people can go and check those out. I don't want to go back to the reasons, the advantages, disadvantages, how long it takes, who do you need, all of that is in that particular post. But really the most common in South Africa is an NPC and an NPO. These are the two that you need to operate in space with the law. But I often say, as hectic and as hard and as frustrating as registering at the Department of Social Development, those are the ones that you want to register with. They own us. Now, you want to be known where you are owned.
Got you. Okay, Sammy, I see your comment. Sammy saying all of them are soon going to be taxed. Sammy, you please give us a little bit of an unpack what you mean by your statement, and we'll come back to it. I'm sure that you're also touching on some of the tax benefits of the different structures, but I don't want to go there right now. I want to come to a different question. Village Mama, I hope you're happy. I heard you. So the question was asked. Tlhatse is asking, Sibu, Tlhatse is asking, is there value in aligning your NGO, whatever format it takes on, with the Sustainable Development Goals, so that there's that global alignment to the global narrative and where the world is going?
Absolutely. I often say that if your cause of your organization is not aligned to at least one of the 18 goals, I think it's 18 goals, quit while you're still ahead.
Wow.
Because you're not helping the world at all. What are you doing? What are you doing? We've defined where we need the help. We've defined what's important. Why manje when ubethala sihamba lathi when wenza ngapha? No. Look at those goals. Now it is possible that you may be aligned to more than one. Great. But still choose the one goal you want to be aligned to. For example, as an organization, we know it's SDG 5 for us, but it's a number of goals added to that, right? Depending on where the organization is going. But at the beginning, there must be at least one. If not, close your doors.
And of course, there's the targets under each goal, right? So that's the opportunity to further fine-tune, to say this is the broad goal, ending poverty as an example, but according to the target of that, some of the sub-targets are the areas that you can go to. And Tlhatse is also saying to us, it's 17, Nozi, and so thank you for that, Tlhatse. Okay, then I do apologize. Shelby is saying, guys, I'm Mauritian. Please translate that part. Hey, Shelby. Ew.
Hey, African. We need to be.
And my French has gone to the dogs, Shelby. I'm really, really sorry about that. J'ai très de soleil. J'ai très de soleil, Shelby.
Okay.
Let's talk
about this. I mean, what?
I'm just saying, I'm sorry. Hi, Safi, the guys are friends. I want to talk about partners and collaboration. Yes. Somebody asked the question really well. I do apologize. I've lost who it was. Oh, Shelby says, I'm Rachel from LRMG, by the way. Hi. So I know Rachel. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. You need to teach me French now, Rachel. We need to sort this out. But there was a really great question. And I can't remember who asked it in the chat right now, saying, What about partnerships and collaborations? How do you approach those? And how do you make sure that whatever partnerships and collaborations you're getting into are adding value, they're servicing the cause, and it's not creating noise around you and the work that you're trying to do?
So I really want to put this out there that collaborations and partnerships are good, but they can also be really bad partnerships and collaborations. And you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you are stuck in a partnership or a collaboration that is not serving you or the organization at all. Once again, this takes us back to our cause. You've got to know why you started your organization, because it'll be very much easier for you to tell if an organization is going to be aligned with your goals or not. All right. But of course, collaborations and partnerships are key. One of the first things you want to look out for is, are your goals aligned? The reason why you want to ask this is that you don't want to get into a partnership or collaboration with an organization that is speaking of abortion is not a good idea. They're anti-abortion. While you are saying you are pro-choice, you want girls and young women to understand the decisions that they're making and be given the opportunity to make that decision. Already those two organizations are not aligned. It's not going to be a relationship, right? So it's really, really important that you do that. Generally, partnerships are good because they allow you to save money, number one. They allow you to reach a wider audience. Because with the other organization's demographic, you might be able to reach spaces ordinarily that you might not be able to reach. It is also very important that don't underestimate meeting, having the conversation around what you want to do. Is your partnership just based on an event or once off, or is it a long-term partnership, right? My recommendation would be once off / event at a time, right? Until you have gotten to a place with that organization where you can be in bed together and it's peaceful, right? Because remember, the goals can be aligned. You can be speaking of the same thing, but something off, even about you, by the way, not just them. They can also feel the same way about you, right? So it's important to test this partnership over one event. Usually, in my experience, partnerships are really hard. Collaborations are really hard. And people often leave the work to one party to do all the work, but then both parties will take the glory. So you've got to be mindful of that. And you've got to make the decision that if that comes across, you will know how to address it. Or even if you leave it, you continue because you know it's not about you, but you will never work with that person again. It's important that people come in 50-50 as best as you can. It might never be equal, but it's fine.
Okay, so I want to get to the tax size question because it's coming up a lot.
Okay.
But before I get there, just on the partnerships and collaborations, a quick follow-up question. One of the things that often happens, and it doesn't only happen in this NGO space, we see it in construction, we see it in other spaces where a bigger organization gets the lion's share of funding and then is able to partner with smaller organizations as delivery partners. And just because of the size, oftentimes 50-50 is not a conversation that can even be entertained because you are delivering, you know, a slice of the bigger work. Now, my question to you is, if you are a smaller organization, what tips or insights might you have for how you still ensure that you're getting your fair worth so that you don't end up doing the grunt work on the ground and yet the large organization gets all the glory, it's their logo on everything, it's their name on the report, And yet, you know, for a small percentage of the funding, you've actually gone and done the bulk of the work. How do we make sure that you're holding your own in those negotiations as well?
Sure, this question is so loaded that I want to start off by saying the reason why certain organizations will get the bulk of the funding is because your small organization is not organized. You're not compliant. You are not meeting certain things that are easy to get. You are just not getting that done, right? And yet you are the one that's doing the work on the ground. You are the one that's making impact, but you are disorganized. That's your problem. And so the bigger organization that is very organized, that has a file of their compliance documents, submits everything on time, checks when certificates are expiring, they are the ones who get the funding. I will not feel sorry for you if you're an organization who's much smaller, who finds themselves in that situation, right? Let's move on, assuming that everyone is compliant, but happen to have a smaller bulk of funding. My recommendation is do not be afraid to get onto a partnership to want to learn. If the other party is bigger, more gravitous and pull in the space, and if you are just fighting to have your smaller logo on the documentation, you are winning, because that is experience that you can further use down the line. Not all partnerships are meant for you to benefit anything out of, except that you can say, I was there. I was a part of the team. So look at certain partnerships and decide which one is going to work for our organization. But the moment you need to put money on the table is where some sort of legalities need to come on point. Some sort of key performance indicators need to be there. You need to be clear about what the objectives are, what the outcomes are, and what the activities to ensure that these outcomes are a reality, and what those things are for you to be able to say, okay, guys, we feel that for our 100 Rand, you guys didn't do what we said you're going to do. But before any of that happens, you need to hear that for our money, this is what we're doing. You should never find yourself, Nozi, in a situation where you feel like you were cheated. Because, by the way, even halfway through the cheating, you can raise your hand and say, as do me.
As do.
As do. So you're not all of a sudden, you know, can't say anything. No. The program could be 12 months long. So it could be a 2-week program. Doesn't matter. 7 days later, you're able to say, why am I the one buying all the stationery? Why are you not buying the stationery? You don't have to wait till the deadline.
Sure. Okay. Guys, forgive me. I'm trying to, we've got 16 minutes left. So, Sammy came back and said, look, he explained things like, Nozi, remember that there was a time that a lot of people were registering like faith-based organizations and the like, because they're like, okay, cool, you're gonna get, well, not even a benefit, but a tax break, an exemption from paying tax and so on. And that, you know, now that's about to change with the laws likely changing and all of that. But there was a question from Two Fly Footy saying, firstly, your PBO, which I think is the public benefit organization, the certificate you get as a PBO that allows you to get that exemption from SARS. There was a question that says, to what extent is it possible to have a PBO certificate before you can approach funders? Is that important? And what is your experience of getting a PBO at SARS? Is it a hard thing to get, or is it something that's fairly easy to apply for and get?
Look, like any government, anything, it's not going to be a walk in the park, okay? But it's doable. Eventually, you got your ID, Aniti. Eventually, you got your driver's license, right? So all of those things you will eventually get, right? Are they hard? They're not hard, but the process can be really frustrating, and it can take a little bit of time. I'll always speak about me. We got funding in the millions before we had a PBO certificate. You do not need a PBO certificate to start getting funding. Not all funders are hung up on the PBO, but some are. And so it's just like I was saying that it's important to register at DSD. Doesn't matter, it takes long, but you get it done because it is really good to be known at DSD, right? Just like here, it's important to have a PBO and a Section 18 certificate, right? To just verify your status at NGO. But this should not stop you from starting. Absolutely not.
Okay, two technical questions.
Okay.
One from Dumiso, which is, how should we be going about measuring impact and success? That's the question. And the reason why I love that question is that if you look at the school space as an example, and I've worked in civil society before, oftentimes you have a whole conglomeration of NGOs all working. So there's one that does maths, there's one that does, you know, tutoring, there's one that does train the trainer with teachers, and then suddenly you start seeing the results of the school improving. How much of that is you versus, you know, the other NGO, NPO that's in that space? It becomes very murky when people start owning the results that they can't really quantifiably say, Uguti, this is really a result of the intervention that we've done. So what are your tips for monitoring and evaluation and being able to tell a credible story of how you're actually making an impact?
One of the ways in which we do this at our organization is to ascertain the level of understanding, knowledge, exposure before we implement. And this is often something that people overlook. You want to come in, start implementing and getting the work done. Even if you're doing a one-day event, you want to start right at the beginning with some sort of captured tool, be it online, be it on paper, an evaluation form, just something to check and gauge where everyone is at the beginning of your particular program. So if you're working in a school that's pretty well funded, there are many organizations working there, you still want to talk about your area. You want to ask questions around knowledge on HIV prevention. What are the HIV prevention technologies that you know about? Do you know of the ring? Do you know of Claballet? Do you know of PrEP or PEP? What is the difference? You want to be able to ask those extremely technical questions, which you know you are going to cover in your intervention. Then you evaluate the same type of questions at the end of your intervention. That is one of the most brilliant ways in which to ascertain whether you have been impacted or not. Or you could even take videos, but as long as you take videos, if you're taking videos of under 18s, you make sure that you get some sort of consent, especially if you're going to be talking about sex, because that's what we talk about. So you want to make sure that, you know, somebody knows that this 15-year-old is talking about sex, and then at the end of your intervention, you want to have the same. Oh my word! You should see how when they come on board and you say them, "What sex?" at the beginning, and how at the end of our program, you know what sex is, ne? Sex is when two, like, it's always so beautiful to see how not only have they owned the idea of sex, they've also come to understand that they must be willing participants in the sexual experience and not passengers. They're able to navigate and negotiate various things during their sexual experience. It's just amazing to see that in the beginning they're shocked. Those are some of the, and on a video, you're able to see that. You're able to see the impact just from the way they confidently speak about the particular topic. So monitoring and evaluation is something very important. It's something at my organization that I could never stand here or sit here and talk about because it's not my area of expertise in the organization. Simpiwe, who's our head of training and programs, oh my word,
that's
he loves
his thing.
That listen.
Okay, lovely. I love that, because I think it's quite important, that we're thinking about that. When what I'm hearing you saying is data, you have to have strong baseline data. What did you find upon entering, and how are you using that as a baseline to make your case for the impact and the underlying story of impact that you're then going to be telling other funders going forward. Okay, so I've got 2 more questions and I've got 9 minutes, so I'm trying here. The one question is a question about sustainability. What are the practices? And I think
is it me or is it...
We can still hear you.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you. It's not as light, perfect, but we can still see you.
Okay.
So there's a question about, I think it was from Futi as well, to say, in terms of sustainability, what are the practices that enhance sustainability, and what are the things that are taking away from you building a sustainable organization? So let's start with that one, and then we're going to close off with a question about structure and boards.
Okay, so sustainability is key. A lot of the time in these new age application forms, there's always a question at the end that says, how are you going to make sure that you sustain this program outside of this funding, right? Number one, the first thing you say is, we will continue to look for funding from day one of the implementation of this program, right? So you are giving the funders comfort that you're not going to stop looking for funding. You will continue to look for funding because funding is out there, it must be found. Secondly, income generating activities in the organization. Mm-hmm. So if your accountant is super cool, and they just know how to make numbers look sexy, that might be a service as an organization that you want to sell. If you have somebody in the organization who's a very good proposal writer, that is something that you may want to sell to other NGOs. A lot of people on here know that I run one-on-one NGO consultations. I use that money to service certain things in the organization. We use it as a way to fundraise for the organization. It's only 500 Rand, but trust me, that 500 Rand can pay for data for all our on the field trainers and facilitators. So the money always goes somewhere, right? Number 3, make sure for sustainability, you look after one core team. You don't want to be chopping and changing. It looks messy. You want to find at least 3 to 5 people that you know are going to be really great for the organization, because those are the people who will have organizational history and will be able to help you get into spaces sustainably so that will help the organization. I mean, there are many other ways, for example, ways around making sure that you are signed up to various NGO funding portals. There are many out there,
I want to just quickly latch on a question on volunteers before we go to the board. How important is it for you to make use of volunteer services? But also, my gut sense is that anybody who's volunteering, not everyone, but a lot of people who are volunteering also have an expectation at the end of that volunteering to say, I'm earning my stripes, I'm building muscle, so that at some point this volunteering can turn into an earning opportunity, especially if it is the only thing, the primary activity that they're doing. I'm not talking about people who are employed elsewhere and are just giving up their time, but I'm talking about people who are unemployed, who are coming to your NGO, they're wanting to volunteer. How do you manage that expectation? And have you had that experience before?
Yeah, definitely. We continue to have that experience. The reality of the situation is that volunteers can be really tricky to have in the organization. As a result, we at Impact Drivers have very few volunteers, because they are really hard to manage. Expectations are hard to manage. So as much as our current team will volunteer 90% of their time and will pay them for only 10% of their time, they are still getting something, some sort of stipend, some sort of being able to maneuver, be it around data, petrol, Uber, that kind of thing, right? But volunteers, my recommendation would be, don't have volunteers until you are settled and stable as an organization.
Yeah.
Because they're an additional they're an additional, for lack of a better word, burden in the organization, right? You want to keep it at board level and management committee level. That's where you want to keep the people that you're
The
working with.
volunteers. So,
yeah.
So let's talk about the board, right? We've got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the board. How do you go about thinking about the kind of board you should be constituting? And then how do you make sure that you have a board that works? Because there's nothing worse than having a board who's able to put board member, and then there's no board membering that is happening. So how do you make sure you have a board that actually works and delivers?
First of all, you've got to have people on your board who believe in the vision. You don't just dope up people on the street. You don't just ask your mom. You don't ask your sister. If your sister doesn't even believe you are going to get this off the ground. There are people that you might have come across, even strangers sometimes, right? Depending on your organization. Strangers who are here on Instagram, on social media, who might like what you're doing, have a little bit of time to give to your cause, and those are the people you get on. So number one, you get people who believe in what you are doing. Number two, make sure that those people are skilled in one thing or another. Listen, creativity is a skill. So even if it's a friend of yours, you big dreamer, we are dreamer. That's the friend you want, because you're going to be dreaming big about the organization. Somebody who's not blinded by the current circumstances. Somebody who's able to look beyond the fact that there's no money. Maldives right now. She's Maldives. That's the person you need in your organization, right? Then you also need people. So I've mentioned people with skills, right? Then you need people with time. There's got to be an element of time. People must be able to say to you, Sibu, I'm going to give you 2 hours of my time per week. If you think about that, Nosy, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. 2 hours a week. If you're asking someone for 2 hours a week, that's not a lot. For something that they're good at, by the way. So you're not even also asking them something that they don't work with on a daily basis. This is something that they work on, they do every day. So you're asking them for their time, right? So for me, somebody's just saying here that the board members are so tricky. Yes, they are. And this is why I often say, register your board members first at CIPC. Here's my tip. Register first at CIPC. Then before you go and register at DSD. Because once you register them at DSD, it's hard to change them. It takes such a long time. Whereas Ngapa, SCIPC, a couple of days and they're gone. Okay? So you want to start at CIPC, not only because you can start operating, but so that you can gauge people, man. So that you can just check. Well, when I call you and I know for just 2 hours a week, do you give me 2 hours? No, when I ask you to fix this paragraph for me, what do you do? How long do you take? But you are gauging all of this while you are registered at CIPC. Once you've got your core team, who, by the way, will also become your management committee, at least for the first year. Now, let me say this. Governance-wise, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to have your board members be the same people who work on the organization day to day. But the reality is, where are you going to get the people to do all of this? So I often say, for about a year or so, especially when you have not asked for anyone's funding, you are more than welcome to use the same people you've started the organization with legally to be the same people who run the organization with you day to day, because you haven't yet asked for anyone's money. But the moment you're asking for someone's money, that is where you're going to have to make a few changes.
Okay, so guys, I've just loved, like Sibu, you're amazing. I've loved listening to you. I've loved learning from you. I've loved engaging with, it's been such a phenomenal session. And we didn't even get to all the questions, but I think all the more reason to say, my goodness, what a well you are. You give so much. and it's been really, really amazing. But I can't let you go. You forgot Valentine's Day plans, no Zimbabwe country, because we can't.
Aziko, Sisi. Aziko, I'm sure you want to keep me married, and the aim is for me to stay married. And if I want to stay married, I need to vote. I'm not saying nothing about Valentine's Day. It's not happening at my house.
Love you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nosy. Love you too. Love your work. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. You've been amazing. And then I just wanted to say before you guys disappear, remember, guys, I promised you 3 tickets to come with me to interview Nolita Fakute for Wits Business School and BCG. Itu Makato, Bunolo Neo, and Malebu Litoko. You are my 3. And then remember, guys, please watch our stories because we've got 2 more tickets to give away. So we've got 2 more questions. And we want to bring 2 more people who are global based to come with us. Sibu, we love you.
Thank you, babe.
And everybody, thank you so much for joining. Cheers. Bye-bye.